Hello, thank you so much, Caitlin, for the introduction, and to Sarita and Kareem for having me today. It's a pleasure, and as always, I love working with Allison, so this is so wonderful to be on a panel with her today. I'm Shannon von Felden. As Caitlin said, I'm the Program Director of the Rare Disease Legislative Advocates Program here at the EveryLife Foundation. A little bit about the EveryLife Foundation. You can move on to the next slide, Caitlin. Oh, I guess I did. I'm here today to talk to you about the power of patient advocacy. So we're going to talk a little bit about the EveryLife Foundation and RDLA, information about how powerful your advocacy is, how to even get started in advocacy, and ways to get more involved. So the EveryLife Foundation is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization located here in Washington, D.C., and we're dedicated to empowering the rare disease patient community to advocate for impactful science-driven legislation and policy that advances the equitable development of and access to life-saving diagnosis, treatments, and cures. We don't speak for patients. We really believe that patients are the best advocates. So what we believe that no disease is too rare to deserve a treatment, that rare disease therapies should be safe and effective, and that we can do more with the science that we already have. So our foundation has a number of policy goals, but I'm going to talk to you today about the highlighted in blue, empowering patients to develop an impactful voice in policy making, drug development, and regulatory decision making. And I know that's a lot of big words and can seem really overwhelming, but I promise it is not complicated. So a little bit about RDLA. We have three main goals in our program. We want to educate patient advocates about legislation and policy to make it as simple and easy as possible to become more involved in that process. We want to build awareness on Capitol Hill and ensure that Congress hears directly from patients and caregivers. I would add to that we also want to make sure that all state legislatures are hearing directly from patients and caregivers as well. And a big goal of ours is to connect every member of Congress with a rare disease advocate so that when they're considering legislation that impacts the rare disease community, they realize that it's not just about treating a disease, but saving a person's life and a person that they've met. So I think that there's a lot to learn from history, and the AIDS movement was just such a unique and revolutionary moment, especially for the healthcare community. People were laying down in front of the FDA. That's the top left picture there, with these signs that were tombstones saying that, if the FDA did not act to approve treatments for HIV/AIDS, literally they would be killing people, real people. And so this was kind of revolutionary, holding the FDA accountable for their process and their regulatory system. Next slide, Caitlin. And so through that activism and the AIDS movement, literally FDA was forced to create a whole new process for approving drugs, and it's called the accelerated approval. There were new regulations allowing for surrogate or biomarkers to determine if the drug is effective. And really what this did was it reduced the time and cost of the development of drugs. And so following this change at the FDA, there was the biggest surge ever in innovation. And it just really highlights the power of that advocacy. Next slide, Caitlin. And one of the most important lessons was that these patients in the HIV/AIDS movement who were educated and activated were the far greater advocates for change than paid lobbyists. And so I think that's the biggest takeaway, is that advocacy and activism can seem really intimidating, but truly you are the most important component to ensuring change for the better for the rare disease community. So there might be many reasons that you advocate for yourself, a loved one, a community. You might advocate to educate lawmakers or to solve a problem. You might advocate because legislation and public policy impact healthcare for you and your loved ones, from closing the gap in the number of treatments there are for rare diseases, eliminating the diagnostic odyssey, which can be 6 or more years for many individuals, improving that regulatory process. There's still a lot of work to be done in that area, and then making sure that there's access to this safe and effective therapies as soon as possible, because it's not enough for us to develop the treatments and have the FDA approve them. We need to make sure that patients can access these therapies, whether that's through private insurers or other ways. There we go. And so you have the power to affect change. That's really the power of grassroots advocacy. And there's many ways to be an effective advocate. You just have to get started, like Allison said. So taking an active role in the political process, influencing legislation and policy, speaking up when you hear something that might impact you, speaking up, telling your story, and you are your best advocate. No one can tell your story like you can, or share your experiences. And I know that many people feel like their legislators in Washington, D.C. don't want to hear from them or don't care. But as a former staffer for a congresswoman, I want to kind of dispel that. I think that many members get into government really from a good place of wanting to help their communities and help others. So I just want to remind you all that when you do want to speak to your legislators or their staff, that you are the constituent. They're going to want you to vote for them in the next election. Not a surprise there. And also you are the expert. And so that is definitely of importance to your members of Congress and their staffers or your state legislators, to hear about your experience as a rare disease patient, caregiver, and learn from that experience, because you are the expert in your experience. And these relationships that you develop with your legislators is so important. This was a survey that was taken a few years back by the Congressional Management Foundation, where they surveyed members of Congress and their staffers. And so you can see that in-person visits from constituents had the most impact on how that office might work on particular issues or vote on legislation. So building those relationships is really key to being influential with your member of Congress. And I like to say that during the pandemic, I think Zoom visits we can substitute for in-person at the moment until we're all back. And this is just basically how a bill becomes a law. And I like to point this out only because I think it just shows all the different points in which there are opportunities to advocate. So you should think of your advocacy as a one-time stop. You do it and then you're done. There are so many points in time in which your advocacy is really critical, or that you're able to speak up. So, you know, from the bill being introduced to it being in committee to committee markups, all the way to until the bill gets to the floor of the House or the Senate to be voted on and then signed into law. So these are all opportunities where advocates can get involved in the process. So what are kind of the keys to being an advocate? I think most important it is to create those relationships with your state and federal legislators, sharing your story. And what's so important about this is you want to have a goal when you're going in and have that ask. Always have something that you want them to do, something concrete. Whether it's co-sponsoring a bill or voting for or against something or sending a letter or contacting Health and Human Services on your behalf, there's always an ask, something concrete for them to do so that they can check it off their list of whether they've done it or not. And ask questions. Asking questions is a great way to engage with your elected officials. Ask them questions about, you know, how they can help you with your journey, what they're doing to improve certain situations or conditions. That's a great way to continue to engage with them. And then like you're doing today, engaging with organizations to support you. There are so many rare disease organizations out there, and finding other organizations to support you in that journey is so critical. And one thing I love about the rare disease community, you hear so often that advocates will help others with their priorities, even if it doesn't impact them. So sending those action alerts on behalf of another organization, especially if they do align, is such a nice thing to do. And then activate your own network. If you're going to advocate, if you're going to send a letter or an email to your legislators or call your legislator, ask your family, ask your friends to do the same, especially when it comes to these email action alerts. It can be easier for others to do it, especially if they have personal connections like yourself or your child. So how do you get started? I think the number one way to get started is determine what your goal is. Particularly if there's a problem you need solved, whether it's insurance coverage for a treatment, needing an FDA-approved treatment, needing a diagnosis, funding for research. There are so many different problems that need to be solved. And it can be as simple as wanting to raise awareness and education about your disease. That can be a great place to start. It's just making sure that your legislators know about your rare disease and how it impacts you. And that's a great way just to start that conversation and start that relationship. And to engage with your legislators, get started by determining whether this is a local issue, a state issue, a federal issue. And once you've determined what your problem is, where you should be going to, you know, at the state level, you'd want to talk to your state legislators and your governor. If it's a federal issue, you want to talk to your federal representatives in the U.S. House of Representatives and your senators. And as you become more sophisticated and advanced in your advocacy, or as a bill, for instance, or particular issue advances, you may want to start reaching out to the committees of jurisdiction, members of the leadership committee. And so, you know, there's so many different ways to engage with them, but don't forget that their staffers are a great resource. Of course, it's great to meet with the member of Congress themselves or the state legislator, but their staffers are the ones that are really doing that day-to-day work and have the ear of the member of Congress or state legislators. So they're great resources, and building relationships with them is even, I would say, as important, if not even more important, than building relationships with the members themselves. And then, you know, when to engage with your legislators, you want to build that relationship over time. And then if there are particular issues that are important to you, don't waste time. Don't wait until it's too late and then regret that you didn't make sure to let your elected officials know about the issue sooner. I always think back to a meeting I had with a group that wanted us to co-sponsor a bill, and so we did. And after the fact, another group was mad at us for doing that. And I said, well, I never heard from you. You never told me that you opposed the bill. So, you know, they don't know until you tell them. So make sure to be active and vocal anytime and all the time. And another great thing that people don't always know is that you don't have to come to Washington, D.C. to meet with your members of Congress. They live in your state or in your congressional district, so that they're home about half the time of the year, and you can schedule meetings with them during their district work periods. And one of the things I loved about Allison's presentation was outlining all the different ways that she is involved in advocacy. There are so many different ways to do it. I love those kindness rocks. And so I just encourage folks to, you don't have to do it all. And sometimes it's best to know like what your strengths are or what you're comfortable doing. For instance, I know some people are great writers, so writing a blog or an op-ed is a great way to become involved in advocacy. Some people are super mavens on social media. I am not one of them, but that's another great outlet for advocacy, making posts, tagging your elected officials. You know, and then it can be so as simple as making a phone call to your representative's office or sending an email. Those are great ways to get started, especially if you're really busy or your health isn't so great right now, or you're busy with your children. So no matter how you engage, it's just great to make it as personal as you can. Continue to tell that story when you're writing or calling your elected officials. Make sure they know who you are, where you live, and that you're a constituent. You can keep going through these, Caitlin, all the different ways to engage. Perfect. And then I mentioned scheduling a meeting. So whether you want to meet with your member of Congress in Washington, D.C. or at home in the district, it's pretty simple. I would say it can be as simple as scheduling a doctor's appointment, although that's not always easy, as my dentist won't even return my call right now. So, but we try to make it as easy as possible. You can go to our website, our Take Action page on the everylife.org website. We have a platform on there where you can find your state and federal officials by just typing in your zip code and your address, finding your legislator's name. You can find their office phone number and give them a call and let them know that you're a constituent and you'd like to meet with the staffer responsible for healthcare, and whether they have a process for requesting meetings or the best way to do that. And sometimes it's even better to supply them with specific dates and times when you're available to meet. So it can be easier. This is something that is part of their job as staffers who work for elected officials. That's part of their job, is meeting with constituents. So you shouldn't hesitate to do that anytime. And when you do meet with your legislators or their staffers, I always encourage folks to find ways to connect. You can really easily research your legislators these days by looking at their website. Check out their press releases page. You can see what are the issues of most importance to them or what they've done recently, as well as their social media pages. And you can also try and find personal ways to connect with them, what you have in common personally. You're from the same state, the same district, so there's a chance you went to the same high school, the same college. You might root for the same baseball, football teams. And so that never hurts. I also, when I meet players, I like to say, when I introduce myself, where I live in our city. I live in DC on Capitol Hill, right near Lincoln Park, and my kids go to such and such school. And so they can really see where I am in the community, where I live, what community I'm involved in, and can really picture that. And then just remember, there's never a reason to talk politics when we meet with our members of Congress, especially about rare disease issues. Rare disease issues are not partisan political issues. And so just keep that in mind, that the rare disease issues are bipartisan and we're the rare party, and that's what's important. And then social media is really an amazing advocacy tool. For one thing, you can do it from home, which makes it super easy. We're all on our computers these days anyway. But it's such a great way to bring attention to the problems that you face. If they're not keeping an eye on their social media pages, which many legislators are very active themselves, they have press secretaries and communications directors who are keeping a very close eye on those social media pages. So you can create posts and tag them, create hashtags to make them aware of the problems. And then you can also thank them for actions that they've taken that you asked them to take or are happy that they did. Thank them for any meetings that they or their staff provided. Sometimes working for a member or being a member of Congress can kind of be a thankless job. They take a lot of heat for a lot of the work that they do from their constituents or from other stakeholders. So when you're able to thank them, when you're able to be that like nice, happy, smiling person who appreciates the work that they're trying to do, that can make all the difference and can really make them want to help you. And then, you know, tag the member with your photos that you take with them at meetings. And then I will say that advocacy persistence is definitely necessary. You have to keep at it and keep going. So when you do get that meeting with your member or staffer, make sure to follow up with them with emails or a letter or a social media post. And then just continue to engage, sign up for their newsletters, look for in-person or virtual events like town halls, or I know my city council member does a lot of coffee chats where he sits at a coffee shop for an hour a month and constituents can drop by. Those are great, easy, very non-intimidating ways to engage. And then look for action alerts on legislation that you want to support or oppose. Make sure to send those. And then, of course, just thank those members when they do act in ways that you've asked them to do so. And stay in touch. You know, you don't want to email or call them weekly. But, you know, I think every month or two, you can give them a little update, or if there's a news article or some interesting new information that might be helpful. Healthcare is such a huge topic at the state and federal levels. So, you know, they can always use more information to help with their decision making. And if you are interested in being an advocate, RDLA tries to make it as easy as possible. So you can sign up for our monthly newsletters and webinars at rareadvocates.org, as well as free events. We have monthly webinars that highlight state and federal legislation. The whole website serves as a legislative clearinghouse, so you can find action alerts there. Our monthly newsletters share information about what's happening on Capitol Hill and other events in the rare disease community, like today's event. We have a state advocacy hub. The state legislation and state advocacy is of interest to you. We also have a ton of resources and tools for advocacy, or tip sheets, or policy primers, or videos. If you just want to take a look at it, you can actually go to rareadvocates.org/tools just to see what's there. And then, of course, you can check out our calendar and Facebook and Twitter accounts too. And so our big next steps in advocacy, you might have heard of it, is Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill. And that is happening this summer, July 14th to 22nd. And you, if you're interested, can register at rareadvocates.org/RDW. The deadline for registration is June 18th. And this is a photo from last Rare Disease Week, which was in person February of 2020. And we're hoping we'll be able to finally get back to in person next year. So this July, we're hoping to have the same life-changing experiences, even with the new dates and the new format being virtual. Next slide. So if you've never been to Rare Disease Week or heard about it, here's a list of the events that we have during the week. We do a Rare Disease Caucus briefing and documentary screening. We hold a legislative conference over 2 days. It'll be in the afternoons. It won't be full days so that people can participate. And that's just an opportunity to learn more about policies that impact the rare disease community, network with fellow advocates. We're going to have a couple different opportunities to do that during the legislative conference, and just learn how to better be an advocate. And then we also have some opportunities for young adults. If you know any young adults who want to get more involved in rare disease advocacy. And then the following week, we're going to meet with our representatives and senators over Zoom. And that's a really great opportunity to get started in advocacy. If you've never met with your members of Congress, we schedule the meetings for you to make it as easy as possible, group you with other rare disease advocates from your state and district so that advocates aren't alone in a meeting. And then we're going to end out the week with diversity roundtables on July 22nd, which will really highlight some of the issues facing the rare disease community in underserved communities. And something really unique and fun for Rare Disease Week this year. We're really excited to be able to support the community during Rare Disease Week. That's actually really important to us as a foundation, that we're supporting patients and organizations. So we are going to give advocates the opportunity to earn points throughout Rare Disease Week from joining events and sessions during legislative conference or other events during the week, to putting your picture up on your profile, to attending your open office hours ahead of Rare Disease Week, and you'll earn points. And then the top 50 point earners will win between $1,000 to $5,000 for their organization of choice. And the donation will be made by the EveryLife Foundation in their names following Rare Disease Week. So it's a great way for advocates to get more involved and benefit their rare disease organization. So you can register at rareadvocates.org/RDW. And if you're interested in attending the Hill meetings, make sure to click and register for the Hill meetings and all the other events that you would like to attend. And again, we will register and schedule those meetings for you on the Hill, and you can select to meet, to have your Hill meetings on the one day or both days, depending on your availability. And then if you do register, make sure to register for our training webinars ahead of time as well. And then another great program for advocacy, I talked about meeting with your members of Congress in the district. We have a program where in the August recess, when most members are home during that August recess, we schedule meetings for advocates to meet with them in the district offices or state offices. We're not doing it this August because we're doing Rare Disease Week in July, but we will be back to hosting that event next year in 2022. So keep an eye out if that's of interest to you. And if you have any young adults, that would be 16 to 30 years old, I would really encourage you to check out heresyard.org to learn more about our young adult representatives of RDLA program. It's a really great program that trains young adults to become more involved in advocacy, public speaking, as well as great networking opportunities. So that's it from me. Thank you guys so much for being here today and giving me the opportunity to talk to you more about advocacy. If you have any questions for me, feel free to email me at svonfelden@everylifefoundation.org. And if any of this was of interest to you, you can check out our webpage, rareadvocates.org, or find us on social media, Facebook and Twitter, and even Instagram. That's it.